Welcome to Big Blend Radio, where we celebrate variety and how it adds spice to quality of life. Welcome, everybody. Today, we're excited to have Mike Eisenberg join us. He is a filmmaker. You may have heard of him for his documentary, Err Is Human, a patient safety documentary. Well, he has another patient safety documentary coming out. It's out now on video on demand through Gravistas, and it is called The Pitch. You're going to want to watch this because if you're like me and many other Americans and North Americans, right, and this is something that will probably revolutionize around the world, we are not that happy about patient care. And this gives us so much hope. And when we think about AI and technology, I know that also gives us this like, I don't know, we're scared of it. This gives us hope. So welcome, Mike. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
This does, the pitch does give us hope, right? Do you feel that making this, that this gives hope?
I do. And honestly, I'm a filmmaker and I do documentary films, but as somebody who loves to watch documentaries, I always find myself feeling almost, depressed and threatened by every documentary that seems to come my way because they're usually about something horrible that's happened, shocking or terrible, and with good reason. This is a platform for us to share these stories that need to be amplified. But I've found in starting to Err Is Human in 2018 and carrying on all the way through today with this new film, that people really, they want to hear what's happening that's making things better sometimes too. And that's not a space that you see a lot of films work in, especially around healthcare. So our mission has always been to find the stories that are behind the scenes in healthcare that show you that when you put the effort in, when you do the work to improve the quality of healthcare, good things can happen. And hopefully as a result, we can get the hospitals who aren't doing that work to see that there's value in it. Because, they're thinking about this dollars and cents sometimes, and they don't always realize that there is actually return on that investment, but sometimes just great value in doing the work. So if we can shine a light on those people and embrace those stories, I think it goes a long way. Sometimes longer than the negative stories.
Exactly. I mean, you put some stats in there that were kind of like, ooh, and, that we did, it makes us uncomfortable, but we all kind of know that uncomfortable feeling with it, right? But at the same time showed how hospitals and some folks were like, hey, why can't we do this? If they're doing this on the business side, we could bring this into the healthcare side. And I thought that was really great because number one, people hate change, right? We all just like, oh, another change. And I think technology has been that as soon as something new's come out, it's changed up already, and that is hard for humans. Humankind has a hard time with change, but the reality is that's the way life is. And I think you really shed a good light on that about those who were like, no, let's be change makers. Let's get outside of our box, think out what is the world doing. And you had one gentleman in there that was working his butt off, right? And I think the pitch is from his being, doing a lot of pitches, really trying to get his software out there to help moms and in birthing and everything that's going on, which is incredibly important right now with what's going on in our country. And everything that he's going through to develop this technology and how he changed his, he's like, we have to work alongside what doctors do. We have to change in how we do things. So there was just so many levels about dealing with change, I think, that you really showcased in the documentary.
Yeah, I think that's the key word is change. Healthcare is an industry that's kind of done things a certain way for a long, long time. And, I think when I think about medicine, I think about that, the culture of it, that it has, pervaded and resisted change. That's not to say that there aren't people doing that work, right? And that's, again, what we really wanted to highlight in this film. It's not all the same stuffy old doctor doing the same old stuffy old thing. There's a lot of revolutionizing going on in healthcare. And it's important to see that because healthcare really does work in a bubble. We're patients. We walk in for our problem. We get help for our issue. It's very difficult to see how a hospital operates. And that's the power of documentary films, is to show people a world they can't see on their own.
Mm-hmm.
And
And
yeah,
yeah, you brought hope in. That's the main thing is like change and hope, change and positivity
yeah.
paired together.
And well, you mentioned the statistics. You have to share the stats, right? You have to tell people the
Yeah.
context and what's at risk here. And patient safety has some really startling and scary numbers. Some of the data suggests that over 400,000 people die every year as a result of some form of medical error, or connected to a medical error. And even other research that's lower than that, some research will tell you it's 215 or 250 and 250,000 to be clear. But no matter what, like, it's way too many. And there
Mm-hmm.
are way too many mistakes that happen in medicine that can be fixed either by the change in culture at a hospital or by implementing technologies that can, take the burden off of the clinician who's
Mm-hmm.
overworked and understaffed and is making a mistake that anybody would make. But the result in the healthcare system is dangerous, and we have to take control of it.
Well, I thought the other thing is, when we went through COVID, right, and we started to realize that our healthcare system is severely overworked, right? Like the people in it are overworked. Hospitals are understaffed. And then the technology that they were using, I mean, I think even the CDC came out with, yeah, sorry, we didn't have like a whole central system for everybody to know about everyone's records, right? If you're a criminal, you're in, Maine, and then you went to LA and got busted for like robbing a bank or something, they know your records from Maine. But in our healthcare system, it wasn't as good as that, right? So it's kind of interesting when we were watching the documentary, we were like, oh my gosh, this is it. We're getting here. There was a gentleman who was talking about, hey, we can actually see the spread of disease in a hospital. And I know people, especially during COVID, who were going through severe medical issues, needing surgery and scared to go to the hospital because they're like, I'm going to die of COVID, even though which one is worse, the disease, cancer that needs surgery now, or this or that. And that was one of those things of hope where they could actually track down what's going on beyond what a human brain can do, because we do get tired. A robot doesn't get tired. They may need to be rebooted, but that takes like 5 seconds compared to us needing sleep. And I think you showed how technology can be paired with humans, and humans still have control. No, we don't have a robot coming in. We have like weird illusions about what technology does, right? We feel like a doctor is going to walk in a robot outfit and, suddenly take over our bodies. That's not happening. You know what I mean?
Well, I
It's,
think that's the most important thing that this film can address. Is when people think about technology, if I were to ask somebody on the street, what does it mean to you? If I say technology in medicine, they would almost always probably talk about robot surgeons or telehealth, which is not robots, but it's, sort of the automation of healthcare. And what we forget is that the real innovation, and the kind that we don't see much of as a general public, is the innovation that takes into account human error and tries to reduce the likelihood of that error. And like you said, they're so overworked. And I think COVID, the silver lining, I hope, from COVID for the healthcare industry is that it really, really put the spotlight on just how overworked they are and just how much we're asking of clinicians and how it's just too much. And, there's going to be another, big healthcare event sometime in the future. Who knows when? I do think COVID taught us a lot, and we'll be able to learn from that and how to handle these kinds of crises. But it also showed the power of technology in order to help things go more streamlined, more quality oriented, get healthcare to do the right things at the right time for the right people, which is what patient safety is all about. And robot surgeons are cool in theory, and Steven Spielberg, made me think about AI a whole different way growing up. But when we look at the future as it exists now, and we think about what it really means to have high technology, it's not flying cars, right? It's better instance. It's getting ahead of things and allowing the speed at which a computer can operate to take care of some of the things that we as humans are really bad at doing. And when we're talking about
Yeah.
healthcare again, that's life or death.
Well, there was also virtual reality that you brought in. And I know that even artists are using virtual reality as art forms, right? And it's really cool because it's this whole new way of doing things and simulation. And that's something you brought in. And, our pilots do this simulation. Pilots do it. I have a friend who's a pilot and he's like, no, it's simulation tests. And he's like, it's like a whole thing he has to do every 6 months is go do simulation. And that's his testing to be the pilot that he is. And he's way up there in that world. And he's like, the simulation thing is really important in medicine. And the technology that some of these, I think it was up in Canada, one of the hospitals, what they did, I was like amazed. Like doctors can go and work in simulation, right? To do the surgery before they do it on the human, but they're doing it
Yep.
and they can actually see everything blown up. Like here it is. Instead of just going in and go, oh, open you up and this is what it is. Oh crap.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
That was IXL, a
Yeah,
facility down
yeah.
in Nebraska. The
Oh,
Canada
Nebraska,
was
that's right.
the command
Yeah.
center, which is also fascinating in its own way. But
Yes.
when we made Two Err Is Human, which was the first film, I'll call it, in this sort of patient safety story arc, we focus so much more on the big picture of patient safety, introducing the world to it. What is it? How are people working to make healthcare safer? And in doing so, it was very clear to us that simulation training was a massive part of that, right? Allowing clinicians to practice before they actually interact with a real patient. Because how many people want to find out right before they go under to anesthesia that this is the first time a doctor or a surgeon has ever done this operation, right? Nobody wants to hear that. And training in aviation, like you said, is a big part of that first film. We actually go into an aviation training facility. We see what it looks like when they're going in the simulator. We even talked to Sully Sullenberger, famous pilot from the Hudson
Yeah.
landing,
Yeah.
and we really saw how other industries use simulation to improve the quality and reliability of people who are doing the work. And we all know, just look at aviation, right? We're never going to want a robot behind the wheel. We're always going to want to know there's a person up front.
Mm-hmm.
Because if there isn't, we're going to worry, well, what do they do in an emergency when they have to think critically about life or death and the human, cost of decisions that are being made. When everything's going well, yeah, you put that puppy on autopilot, you fly 400 miles, but you always have to have humans at the forefront of technology. And if you don't, we lose the human touch. And in medicine, human touch is everything.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to go into a hospital and talk to a screen. So I think that's always been a challenge for healthcare. It always will be. But as we implement new technology, it's all about using it in the right way and putting it in the hands of the right people.
Mm. And also, doesn't this free up the doctors in a way to have more of that human connection and conversation so they can hear more about what the patient is going through? We talk about bedside manner and everything, but um, they're able to really get facts that maybe they don't get to see right away because of the way the data is, and see, like, is something an epidemic? Or maybe, a scan is going to show something more. The data is going to show, hey, what about this? That it's like, there's only so much we can do as a human, but they can go, hey, no, this, that, or the other, because they now may have just a regular physician have a little bit more time with their patient to really find out what's going on, even on the emotional side, which can also present itself in the physical.
Yes. We are not zeros and ones. We are
Yeah.
not equations to be solved. And I think that's the barrier that we need to create between how far we take technology in healthcare. And if you see the film, you'll see that we believe in the power of technology to make healthcare safer. There are opportunities out there and they need to be explored. But we didn't get into it as much as maybe I would have liked in the film, but I think that conversations like we're having right now, and when we do screenings of the film and we have discussions after, and that's the beauty of documentary, you don't have to answer every question in your runtime. Like,
No.
it's about creating a conversation, just like we're
Yeah.
having here. And I hope that the conversations that come from our film are really about, okay, I like that. Let's maybe, if it's somebody in a healthcare system, like, let's embrace what we just saw in the film and try and bring that to our hospital. Or if it's somebody who's not in medicine, they're going to be a patient. It's about opening their eyes to what they should be seeing around the hospital and the automation that they should see, but also thinking about, okay, am I still feeling the human touch? And am I still feeling that interaction that I deserve to be having? So there's a lot there, but I want people to talk about the film after they see it too.
Well, yeah, because the thing that you did is you took fear away, right? And fear is important. We need fear to let us know when something's wrong, right? But fear, we've created so much unjust fear in this world on so many levels, on so many things, by talking heads, by the way media can be. And it's like, we're reading headlines, and the power of documentary is massive. And it is like, oh, let me look at this a different way. But it really took this fear and just this blatant, oh, we're never going to, no, you know what I mean? There's the big yes or no, but you went into the gray area. You you went right in there. You're like, hey, I'm going in. And
it's scary stuff.
Takes the fear. Yeah, it's scary, but it was so enlightening when we were watching this, because the healthcare system is a pain. Like, if you're sick and you're really going through something medically devastating too, the last thing you want, like, can we fix the healthcare system itself? Yeah, it's trying, but the healthcare system itself is sometimes worse than the issue, the medical issue. And so now, if you can say, okay, wait, the medical issue is getting better, maybe we can now get these systems, and everyone's trying to work on it. It's just not perfect yet, and nothing is ever perfect, and it's always changing. So science is always changing, and scientists get a bad rap all the time, which drives me nuts. Every time we get a scientist on the show, I like bow down, because people don't understand that it's always changing. It's not a scientist's fault that we found something new. We should be going, yay, and I think that, again, is the power of documentary,
I don't know how to say this in a nice way. I don't have a lot of respect for people who sort of brush off science and research and things that have been done for years, picked apart and identifying the risks and the problems and trying to solve the problems, simply because they don't agree with with where that science is at. Okay.
Yeah.
It's everyone's right to question, and they should, right? Mm-hmm. It's even part of being a good patient is questioning your diagnosis and asking questions. Questioning science is good. Resisting it or doubting it is bad, because it's always a learning process. We talk about medicine, doctors in practice. Probably a reason they use that word, right? It's always evolving, always learning. And, if you go back 50 years, they were still doing procedures on patients that today we would be shocked.
Leeches, right? Everybody, leeches.
Exactly. So medicine evolves fast. And I think what we're seeing now, and the reason why this film can only sort of happen today versus 5 years ago or 10 years ago, is because of how fast technology is evolving. And we all have phones in our pockets now. That was a pipe dream 20 years ago, and maybe more. But it was, it's happening so fast, exponentially fast, and it's going to be extremely difficult for certain industries to keep up. Healthcare is going to be one of them, because they're learning from people who did it 20 years ago, right? That's how they learn medicine. They learn from the people who've been doing it for so long that they're actually learning the ways before their ways. And that's something we tap into in this film, is if you're going to teach the next generation of clinicians how to deliver healthcare, you're going to have to find a way to teach them how to deliver the care of the future when they're in it, not the care that we were doing in the 70s or 80s.
Well, this is so interesting, because Nancy and I, we're mother-daughter, do this. We've been doing this since 97 in this country. as a print magazine, then we were pre-Google with our websites. We were pre all of this stuff. And we were in the beginning of podcasting and all with the changes we've had to do. And we started out in Africa. So it's like the changes we have done in the media industry, like I feel ancient, but we were talking about this the other day. It's like you're a pioneer one day, the next day, like you did all the hard work as a newbie on the block, and then someone's new comes in and swoops in, takes one little part and goes, hey, now I got a bigger, better thing. It's like, that's the way it is. Then your documentary got us talking about this because it's like every pioneering is short-lived, right? And it's the hardest part to be the new person with a new thing. And then the next generation comes in, but it's a beautiful thing if we all look at that. Energy doesn't die, right? And neither does how we keep progressing if we do it in the right way. And we work together and understand that, it's like even if you look at music, right? We still go and steal from the old musicians, don't we? To make the new music, We're carrying a torch would be the better way of saying it. So if we look at it that way, I feel like it's generational change too that's going on along with technology. And I know a lot of people generationally that are embracing this. It's kind of interesting to see this. One thing I wanted to touch on, going back to the virtual reality, is inpatient, surgeries. And you had a doctor, a surgeon who's like, we're using virtual reality for the patient so they don't have to be drugged out and they can drive home. And that was amazing to see. And the next generation, oh my gosh, this upcoming generation of people we have, can you imagine how life is going to be for them? They don't have, I just want to see this doing better in dentistry. Like,
I avoid the dentist for this exact reason.
But yeah, I mean
if I did a lot of research. My team and I worked really hard to find the stories that we thought were the right ones to tell in this film. We didn't have unlimited time, I spent 10 years diving into things. First of all, the technology would sort of like change before the film was over. And that's part of the reason when you're making a film about technology, you kind of got to move fast. But when we saw what they were doing at Waiver, which is the wide awake VR that we show in the film, I was just really interested. And it felt like a good place to get the conversation going in the film. This isn't the end of the movie showing you the best of the best. This is where we're going. Like, this is early in the film, show you sort of, here's an example of something that's happening today using technology we all understand in a different context, using it to try to improve medicine and reliability, patient safety, right? Anesthesia is very reliable, probably one of the longest running patient safety focused parts of healthcare. It's like one of the original patient safety organizations was anesthesia based. But it's not perfect. And that's the goal that you see a lot of innovators and entrepreneurs. They want to find perfection. They want to create the tool that's going to take something to the next level, get it even better. And, this VR approach to replacing full anesthesia is not going to make sense for every surgical procedure. It's not going to be the preference for every patient. But for the patients that do want and can have that kind of experience, making that available to them is, I think, a good way to look at medicine. It shouldn't just be you walk into a hospital and you have to do everything their way. That's the hospital complex that I think drives hospitals to only look at bottom lines and make it so that you don't have a choice as a patient and you have to just do whatever they tell you to do and they keep pushing you down the line. So I liked this as an idea, as a concept, as something to create a conversation around. But, it can't solve every problem.
No, I loved it though. I went through a surgery years ago and they were putting a rod in my arm and I was panicked about the anesthesia. Panicked because I knew you could wake up, and I wanted to know what's the code word or what do I do if? And they just basically shut me up and knocked me out and put me in surgery. And I thought that was horrible. I was so scared. I freaked out. Like I was freaking out, and all I needed was some basic information, and that's all I wanted. Like, what if? No, that doesn't happen. I'm like, bull. I know it does. Don't tell me it
I
doesn't.
feel it's a complicated.
Yeah,
It's complicated, right? Because it's like if I were a doctor and I was asked that question, my goal would be to comfort you, would be to say, not to worry about that thing. Because if I told you all the things that could go wrong, you'd freak out and run out the
I
door.
just want a code word. I just want to say,
But
what do
at
I
the same
do
time,
if?
yeah, it's like, how do you trust that that the people who are doing your operation when you're completely out and unconscious are going to be there for you and are there to make sure that you're getting the best care possible and that they're looking out at each other to make sure everybody in the room is doing it right. That's where we see problems. That's where patient safety hits the headlines, is when, everybody in the room is not aligned for the same mission. Somebody makes a mistake. The hierarchy of healthcare takes over. Somebody sees that mistake, is too scared to speak out on it because they'll get fired or they'll get, they'll get yelled
Yeah.
down at. They don't speak up. Problem happens. And then it's all happening under this sort of secret veil in an operating room where you're the patient and you're out unconscious. So we do give a lot of power to healthcare professionals, and they've worked hard to earn our respect. But there's a difference between respect and trust. And trust always has to be earned. And the hospitals that show you that they make mistakes, that they talk about that in the open, they're usually actually the ones that are more reliable and safer to go to. The ones that say they never make any mistakes, those are the ones you should look out for.
Same as mechanics, right? I mean, these are body mechanics, but I think what you've done is really like created that dialogue, which is so important. Before you go, I just want to say, can you do one on climate change and science and changing things? Can you do a documentary on that? Because I'm just saying you have a very good way of opening our brains and minds, to change.
I appreciate that.
One of the best things I've seen in a long time of bridging that gap of something that people have a deep-seated fear over.
That's the problem of our generation. So
yeah, but you do good. You're good, and so you need to do the next one, please, for climate change and the science.
I will look into it.
Please do talk about electric cars and all that kind of stuff, because you're so good at this that I'm just like, please do this now. We need to do this. Just as important. But thank you so much.
Well, if everybody goes out, if everybody sees this film and it's taken seriously as an addition to the landscape of documentary, then we'll have a better chance of making that film.
There you go. And everyone, it's out now.
Call to the audience.
So it's out now on video on demand. So go check it out, go watch it, and you'll feel better about going to the doctor. And you'll also have a dialogue to have with your doctors and medical facilities, and maybe tell them to watch it. How about that? Okay. Thanks so much, Mike, for joining us. It's been a real pleasure, and really appreciate your work.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you for listening to Big Blend Radio. Keep up with our shows at bigblendradio.com.